So, Sandeepan, you're no stranger to the studio. You've done a couple of these episodes. How does it feel to be on the other side?
Hi, Ismail, first of all, thank you for having me as a guest. I wanted to be a guest in this podcast for a long time. But now that I don't know what you're going to ask, it makes a bit difficult. But I'm really excited to play the guest role in this episode.
Well, I appreciate you coming down, Sandy. I think one of the things that a lot of people have top of mind when we talk about data and we talk about AI and we talk about technology is how do I become a part of this world? How do I forge ahead and build some kind of career in tech, and specifically if I want to do something in machine learning and data science and data analytics. And it's kind of opaque for a lot of people who are outside. And I think you could really help out with some insights for people who are aspiring to move in that direction. Now, you've recently been promoted from senior to principal as a data analytics solutions architect. You've come a long way in a very long career in the sector. Why don't you take a step back and tell us, how did you get started and how did you end up here?
Yeah, sure. I'll do that. But first of all, let me just start by saying that this is a really exciting space now, right? So there was a recent report making rounds on LinkedIn. I don't remember exactly who was the publisher, but they showed that data and analytics, big data analytics, AI skills and jobs are at the top right corner of the quadrant, which means that there is huge demand, and we know there is huge demand. Um, and yeah, so it's really exciting to be in this space. If I look back at my career, I started as a database administrator when databases used to be and still are in on-premise servers. Um, and then I gradually
But what
moved.
did you study in university?
Oh, okay. You want to go that?
Sure,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So I studied computer science and engineering. I did my graduation in that stream from Vellore Institute of Technology. It's a university in the southern part of India in a state called Tamil Nadu. Um, and I think that education really helped me into breaking into this career, right? So first of all, um, I got a job in an Indian consultancy called Tata Consultancy Services, very famous, one of the largest Indian IT companies. I got into a very good project which focused on Microsoft stack. So I worked as a SQL Server database administrator as I started. Uh, Initially in the application support team, supporting user queries and troubleshooting issues. But I think that really laid a very good foundation for me because I started with talking to users. I started with understanding where it pains when something goes wrong and who are the stakeholders who get involved first from every side. Even now, when I work with different customers, the lessons that I learned in my initial role still plays out. And it's fascinating that it does because sometimes you look and say, oh, yeah, how did you do that job? But, there are so many things to learn from each and every role. But moving on from a database administrator, then I gradually went into the development side of, backend development side. So I started writing SQL store procedures, and then that turned into me contributing to some of these projects that had a development life cycle. Then I moved into doing ETL pipelines, building reports, and modeling data warehouses. So gradually moved towards a BI developer role, more on the Microsoft BI stack. Then cloud happened. I was interested in learning the cloud. Then went into learn Azure naturally because I was aligned to this Microsoft stack of technology. Um, then I learned how the cloud works. How APIs work, how these services scale. Uh, and then I got a job in AWS. Really lucky to be here. Some amazing set of people like yourself that I work with, and get to learn a lot. And yeah, I mean, it's
And
been
what's your role
phenomenal.
now? Like, can you describe a bit what you do?
Yeah. So right now, as a principal analytics solutions architect, I work with customers to help them understand the long-term data strategy. There was every business has a big vision. Um, my job is to turn that vision and relate that on how data plays a role in that organization, help them understand from where they are at the maturity level with data today to how they can go to generate more business value. And that could be anywhere from using data in a better way, using data insights as soon as they get generated, or even moving towards technologies like AI to do prescriptive technologies, using generative AI to generate content and stuff like that. So overall, I mostly align with the data strategy piece, the visioning piece, but then there is another hat that I need, there are other tasks that I need to do in terms of, hey, we have got this data architecture, we have got this data platform, we need to optimize it for cost, for efficiency, we need to improve our operations with this stuff. So that's where I get involved as well. Talking about best practices, giving them suggestions and recommendations on how they can use the cloud to scale.
So I'm seeing a number of skills here that overlap, but they're not necessarily the same, that are required to do this job successfully. Technical skills, of course, customer-facing skills, an understanding of commercial enterprises and business and how business is done, change management in the organization, and organizational complexity, orchestration, and program management. How did you figure out what skills you needed at each step of your career so that you can build out that skill stack?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is by making mistakes.
Right, okay.
But it comes with experience. You need to be in the right places at the right time. I think one of the things that played out well for me is I'm very curious in understanding what's happening beyond my daily job role.
Yeah.
So if I'm working in a job and let's say this is my role, that I design data platforms for customers, but I will not just focus on that. I will think about, okay, how it adds value to the customer's business. What is the customer's business? What does that business do? Or how does that industry operate? How data plays a role in that industry? So it kind of adds layers, and because I can go beyond my focus area and start to learn the adjacent areas, I can start easily connecting to, okay, if this department is working on data, these are the departments, they're the consumers, these are their goals. They want to achieve A, B, and C from the data. And as the IT or data department in the organization, these are the stakeholders that they should be engaging with. And as me advising this team, I should play a certain role that aligns with this team's goals, that help the consumer teams achieve their goals. So when you start thinking that way, then all of these things fall into place. That, okay, the data delivery team needs to make changes that needs to go to production. So they need to develop them in an environment, test them, put them into production. There needs to be this life cycle. So how do we help them design that?
Yeah.
Right. How do we help them efficiently run that in a day-to-day basis? So then you start thinking about change management, right?
Yeah.
What helped me as well is that because I worked in financial services, they're very strong on change management. So I was part of a change advisory board in one of the organizations, and the change advisory boards are actually built using people from different parts of the organization who would come and then look into this stuff. Obviously, you get trained with it, but that helped me understand how changes propagate. Now, a lot of these have changed with the cloud, because you cannot have a 4-week-long change management system and then work with cloud. When I say 4 week, it's really short. Like sometimes it's months, right, with organizations.
Of course.
But yeah, and that again helps me to understand that, okay, this business is in the cloud. They want to make these changes, but they are still following a culture that suits an on-premises environment. They are not actually taking the full advantage of cloud. So although there is no technology in this discussion, but you still understand what is the culture. How can you then start advising this particular organization on how they can change their mindset and culture to work with the cloud?
You bring up some important points, because a lot of our listeners may not even know about all of the activity that happens in tech to make tech happen inside the organizations that they work with, like their banks or their governments or their supermarkets, etc. What does the role-scape look like for people in tech? I mean, everybody knows about software engineers in Silicon Valley. What else is out there, broadly speaking, that somebody could explore?
In whole of tech or data
Yeah,
analytics? Okay. Let me start with data analytics, and then
yeah, sure.
I'll broaden in
Yeah,
the adjacent spaces. So in data,
yeah.
there are, well, I can't even count, but there are many
I
roles.
mean, yeah, we don't need all of them, obviously, maybe at a high level. That would be
Yeah.
fine.
So I mean, the three main roles that jump out when you talk about data and analytics are data engineers,
Okay.
who are basically the pipeline builders, right? So they
Yeah.
would take data from sources, they will manipulate data and put them into a destination from where the data analysts can analyze data. So data analyst
Yeah.
is another kind of role who ask questions on the
Yeah.
data, right? And they try to relate all the insights to the business outcome. And data engineers basically help scale all of these plumbing and the pipeline activities,
Yeah.
right? Um, and then you've got the data scientists, so who would go and explore data, build machine learning models, do all the stuff that's needed to do predictive and prescriptive analytics, so which is like, predict what's going to happen, forecast and things like that. And then you have got business intelligence developers who build reports. And when we talk about these kind of roles like business intelligence developers, they need a lot of knowledge in data modeling.
Yeah.
You, in some organizations, you would just have data modelers as
Yeah,
a role, so you'd have data modelers, because modeling of data is really so important for those businesses that need specialized skills to do that, right? So these are few skills roles that come up in the data space itself. You go adjacent nowadays with AI coming up. You have got obviously you will have machine learning engineers, which kind of overlaps with data engineers a bit, but then machine learning engineers have got a significant role to play in setting up machine learning operations, right? And they do that. You would have AI engineers nowadays building AI systems, agentic AI systems. So there are some of these roles in AI. If you think about a tech company building products, you will have product management roles. You will have product managers who understand tech. If you go beyond that, as I talked about change management systems, you would have people who work in DevOps or
Yeah.
data ops in data ops world, who operationalize all of the changes and automate development, test, production, propagation of changes and stuff like that. So there are all of these roles, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
and you can keep expanding in
Of
different
course.
areas. And I think if you think from first principles, the roles that kind of fall into certain buckets. There are roles that who are thinkers. They are the strategists. They understand the business vision.
Yeah.
They will think about the future, and they will think 3 to 5 years ahead and say, okay, this is what needs to be. And then there will be builders, implementers, who will build what is being thought about, and then they will have a roadmap, and they fulfill that roadmap, right, in terms of building and implementing. And then there will be people who help the builders produce this environment of building. So like they will create all the DevOps and product life
Yeah.
cycle management and things like that, right? So there is these buckets that come into play.
That makes a lot of sense, and I think that demystifies some of the work, or a lot of the work that happens outside of software engineering. What about people who are non-technical? They don't have a computer science background, and maybe these kinds of skills are a bit too far removed from their baseline right now. Is there a place for them in the tech world? What kinds of things could they do in this whole data life cycle?
There is, of course, there is. If think about okay, I'll tell you the trend, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
businesses, a lot more businesses use data now
Yeah.
than 5 years ago or 10 years ago, right? And as businesses are maturing using data, they are thinking not about only data and static reports and dashboards. They are thinking about business outcomes, right? They're thinking about how can we use data to reduce my time to delivery or time to value realization. They're thinking about how can we build new revenue streams with data. And when these kind of use cases come up, they are much more tied to the business. And when these things are much more tied to the business, you need roles who understand business rather than the tech. So you would have people like business analysts who really understand the business, and they know that what they need to deliver a business outcome, and they will then work with tech teams to translate some of those business outcomes to the tech teams and kind of give them vision on how they should build, whether it's a product or it's an internal application, whatever it is, right? Then you would have, I work a lot with software, B2B software companies,
Yeah.
and software companies have, they build on data, right? And be it whether using data to inform their product roadmap, using data to understand how users are using their products, or even delivering data to their customers in some sort of productized format, right? And they have a whole bunch of roles around sellers who would sell their products, and they need to understand the tech well because they're technical product sellers.
Yeah.
They would have go-to-market specialists. They would have just thinking about other roles. You tell me, what other roles would play a role?
Well,
technical.
yeah, I mean, I was actually pleasantly surprised when I started my career to find that there's so much more out there that needs to be done beyond us just writing code. Because when you do that in university for a couple of years, you think that's all there is, and all the interviews are coding interviews. So you think, how good am I at lead code? How good am I at data structures and algorithms? This is what's going to make or break my career. But the world is pleasantly larger and more complex than that. So, for example, the way that I see it framed now is that we only know, or the popular idea is engineering, right? You have software development engineers.
Yeah.
But there's also a massive, massive place for the sales organization of people who will sell the software that software engineers make. And that cuts across any industry, B2C, B2B, whichever it is, right? Even if you're making something like, let's say, a laundry app, right? You need salespeople to go and make deals with the brick and mortar laundromats and hook and get them convinced to have a revenue sharing model with the app that the developers are building, so that you can have a cross-charging model in the back end where the customer will just seamlessly get the laundry picked up from the app, and then whichever laundromat's close to them picks up the laundry and gets it delivered, right? Then you've got people in operations who need to operationalize that tech and manage it day to day. Then you've got delivery, right? So if you're a software house, you have people who are building the software, people who are selling it, but who's actually going to get it installed in a customer's organization? So if you think about, the clearest example for most people at work is they have a system that they interact with, which is an ERP, usually SAP, for example, or Oracle. That used to take years to install and deliver, a very complex system, especially if you have a supply chain management system, warehouse management, etc. That requires a different set of skills than the developers or the salespeople. And then on the organization itself, right, who is not a software organization, but they need software to run their business, you have all of these different types of roles too. You have a chief technical officer, a chief data officer, you've got sometimes a chief digital or innovation officer, and then everybody that reports to them too. I think, going back to data specifically, the most interesting role for me that I'm seeing there's a lot of growth of for non-technical people who are willing to learn a little bit is the growth of the non-technical product manager or data product manager role, or outside of data, the digital product manager role. So you see that there's a lot of initiatives inside organizations, let's say, to build complex dashboards or a Gen AI powered application that serves internal users, for example, or a digital center of excellence inside an organization that solves, let's say, a global function that cuts across different business domains. Personally, I'm seeing a proliferation of roles of people coming from the business domain who are looking at the role and saying, there's so much manual work here. You know what, I can automate some of this. And they start playing around with SQL or Power BI or Tableau, or some kind of no-code, low-code tool, or trying to learn some SQL, and then they're building a mock-up, and then they're showing it to their manager, and their manager is getting excited, and then they have to go back and work with the data platform team to operationalize it. This, which used to happen organically when me and you started out, is now actually a role.
Yeah.
There's an official data product manager role, and they own the delivery of that product with SLAs, with departments, with managers, with deadlines, down to the colors and the fonts, and the refresh cycle, and the incremental data loads. And they work hand in hand with the engineering teams to bring all of that to life, you know?
Yeah.
And I find that very interesting because we can't do it without them anymore. Like you were saying, data has become much more important to every business. And technical users will always do technical things, so you don't need to convince them to learn, you know, data science or machine learning. It's much more difficult to teach a business who's been thriving for 50 or 100 years on their physical life that, you know what, you need to embed these tools into your DNA instead of just like outsourcing it to a different department.
Yeah.
So I think for people out there who are looking for things that they can do in tech, there's a lot more than there was before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you're talking about the
Yeah.
tech and business thing. I think there are roles that sit in between as well. Like, I think
Yeah.
our role is kind
Yeah.
of that in between
Yeah.
business and tech, right? So we understand the tech, we connect to the business, and then try to speak both of these languages and translate them to depending on who you're talking to, right?
Yeah.
And that is a skill in itself, and you cannot really learn it by studying anything.
Right, yeah.
You have to have that experience to understand what motivates each stakeholder and then convert your tone, your language to that, right? So that's I think that's a really important skill to have
Yeah.
in any organization now.
You know, I think that you bring up an important point, which is you said, you know, you can't really study for it. And this is frustrating to a lot of people, even a lot of smart people, because they're like, you know what, I want this skill that I'm missing. I want it to be controllable. I want to figure out a formula, quote unquote, to learn things. And real life is messier than that. But I want to share some things that an old manager and some mentors have taught me. I think that could be helpful to some people who are trying to learn these ambiguous skills that you mentioned. So if you have 100% learning, you could do 10% book learning. We're talking on the job here, after you've finished university, for example. 10% on the job learning, 20% learning from other people, and then 80% learning on the job. That's kind of like a good mix for people who are aspiring to learn a complex skill that's not like documented somewhere. And I would expand also on the 20% to talk a bit about some of the practices that I learned here at Amazon that I found really useful. The practice of shadowing and reverse shadowing with a mentor, right? So especially now with remote work, it's become much easier to learn from other people across geographies. So if somebody has an area of expertise or a soft skill that you want to learn, you don't need to fly over there or ask permission anymore. You just jump on a call with them and listen in. And you could shadow them and see how they do the job so that you can do that skill. So that would cover part of it. So you have an idea of, okay, what do I need to do exactly, or what does success look like in real life? That forms the scaffolding for you. And then you reverse shadow, where you actually deliver that same thing that mentor was doing, but they're going to be there listening silently to provide a safety net or training wheels for you, so that you don't risk something mission critical for the business and get your feet wet with the skill. And then with enough iteration, you can take the training wheels off, and through practice and iterating, you'll be able to learn that skill basically. And it's such a simple thing, these couple of concepts that I just mentioned, but they're so underrated in a way. And when you're just studying at school, nobody tells you this. Nobody tells you that this is how real learning happens. Even though, to get a bit philosophical, throughout most of human history, people learned through apprenticeship, didn't they? I mean, work and study were blurry. There wasn't clear separation between school and work. You just start becoming a blacksmith apprentice or a shepherd or whatever. And you just kind of learn from a master, and then you become the master, and then you do the same thing with the younger generation. And that still has a place in our work today.
Absolutely. I think this is having a mentor is a really good thing to have.
Yeah.
while you were saying that, what I also think is really important, and this is for everyone starting out and understanding the data space especially, but it applies to any technology, is the importance of understanding the fundamentals, right? I do a lot of hiring interviews, and when I try to hire individuals, I find a lot of people are focused on a particular product or a particular niche of something, and they don't actually have clarity with the fundamentals. So just to pick up an example, like if I talk about data warehousing, I really need to know the fundamentals of data warehousing, like what sort of data modeling works with data warehouses, why do we need a data warehouse, what kind of personas use a data warehouse, etc., rather than just knowing A, product B, and product C. Like I literally did interviews with people who come and say, I know this product, which is a data warehouse. But I'm like, this is not a data warehouse. This is a product that provides data warehousing capabilities.
Right, yeah.
Right. So it's really important to understand fundamentals, because if you understand fundamentals, then you can actually map your knowledge from first principles to a lot of other topics, right? So even when you need to learn a new skill, like having a mentor who would facilitate your learning on a particular subject, you will still need to understand the fundamentals to connect to that quickly. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult to excel in any of the new domain that you want to learn.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree, and I think, this applies not just to a particular skill set, but towards your tool belt when you're building up a career in general, right? So, for example, skills like managing your manager, skills like how to talk to a customer, skills like how to manage a business review, how to be professional, how to ask for help from a mentor, right? Even interviewing skills, right? Interviewing skills are the first skill that nobody teaches you that you need, actually, after you finish university. And even managing time, which is quite underrated, like managing time in an interview, in a meeting. Managing your nerves is also a big thing. Like, I mean, you've done a bunch of public speaking in these last couple of years. I'm sure you have a ritual by now to get yourself in the right headspace. These are also things that people may shy away from because they don't have the fundamentals covered. And that's okay, I mean, nobody's born knowing these things, but sometimes they're just skirted over, and they assume, oh, you know what, this person is good at this, I'm not, so I'm not going to do it. But actually, no, you need to look at what's behind the curtain. And it goes back to what you said earlier, which was curiosity, right? If you learn to be curious about anything, you'll discover there's a meta to every single thing that you need to know. And if it's worth it to you, if you ask the right people and put the right amount of effort, and you're strategic about how you design your learning, one way definitely that's effective is through mentorship, or shadowing and reverse shadowing, you will be able to acquire the 80-20 of most of the skills that you need. You may not be top 1%. That's a totally different discussion. This is elite performance where you're fighting for centimeters of differentiation. Most people are not in that situation. In fact, I would encourage people to think about, instead of trying to become top 1% in something, what are the 3 things that you can combine where you can be top 25%, but together you form a market of 1 or a market of 10? Basically, creating your own niche. And that doesn't have to be a business, by the way. It can just be the thing that you're specialized in, or the thing that you're known for in your team or in your organization. It's one of the ways to get promoted, for example, is to be known for something different. Maybe you can share some thoughts about that, since you've recently been promoted, about like.
Yeah, sure. So, good. You mentioned some of these, I think, really, really important skills that do not directly apply to the technical or the core job, right? And I think to grow in an organization or grow personally, you need to have these skills that do not relate to your day job directly, like as in data engineering and stuff like that.
Like meta skills.
You need meta skills. So you need not only meta skills, you need EQ, emotional quotient, right? So you need, especially in customer facing roles, you need to have that empathy for that customer. Oftentimes you will see that there's a lot of tension, especially in escalations, and customers are oftentimes they express dissatisfaction with something.
Yeah.
And if you can't actually relate to their feeling, then it's really difficult for you to transition it to a positive, outcome.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that how much ever technical knowledge you have, you cannot really drive those kind of conversations. You don't have the meta skills or emotional quotient in that case. I think in order to grow, one of the things that you need to focus on is how you can be a go-to person,
Right.
right? Think from the leader's perspective. So, like your leaders, right? The people they look at are the people who are the doers, right? So there will be a lot of people who talk about a lot of stuff. They will, especially in technical roles, people love to show off technical. There's nothing wrong in that. If you know something really good and you want to show it off, it's fine. But are you actually doing? Are you actually delivering results? Is something that will matter. You only become a go-to person when people see that you are doing things, right? You have to understand that how much ever time you spend in learning, how much ever time you spend in going deep and deep and deep into technology will not matter unless people see that you are delivering stuff, right? So that's really important. Be the go-to person on, it can be just one topic, right? It can be public speaking, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, this is the person who does a lot of public speaking. Probably he or she can give me some tips about that, right? It can be anything. It doesn't need to relate to your core job. But yeah, if it is relating to your core job, then it's really good, right? The other thing that matters is closing the loop. So, and I learned it from one of our leaders in AWS, is when you tell someone that I will do it or I will follow up on this, or let's talk about this at in the future, reach out and close that loop. Don't leave that loop open, because when you reach out and close that loop, people understand that you take things sincerely and seriously, and what you say has value.
Right.
Because I have seen a lot of times people will say something, but they don't follow up, but what they wouldn't bother about it later on. Everyone's busy. Things come up, and you forget about something that you told someone. But if you're actually telling someone about something and you're opening a loop, then you should close it. That matters a lot. And I have learned it the hard way. I was not that kind of person, right? But I have learned it the hard. I made mistakes. I understood, okay, this is what works, and then I did that. So be the go-to person. Try to close the loop. Explore beyond your core area. Have these meta skills that you were talking about, right? Let me ask you something.
Sure.
I'm really I love talking about these
Yeah.
skills that don't directly relate to data or data
Yeah.
engineering or all of our core skills, because I think these are really important. Uh, I know that you do a lot of speaking, public speaking, and the podcasts, etc. Tell me how public speaking has made a difference in your career.
Well, I've never been asked that question before, but I think it makes a difference in a couple of ways. So first is the types of skills that you learn leading up to public speaking, which is challenging your fears, learning to manage your nerves, and learning how to calibrate your preparation. What I mean by that is it's easy to over-prepare or under-prepare because you're just preparing according to your emotions. But preparing the exact right amount is a skill. That takes experience. And the other skill, or the meta skill that I learned from preparing for a lot of public speaking, is the importance of volume. Like, some things, you just need to do them a lot. There's no magic to it. You just got to put in the hours, Maybe not 10,000 hours, again, because we're not necessarily trying to reach elite performance in every single skill that you need for your job. But enough hours that this becomes an accessible skill to you, that you can do this and you know that you can do it. And that's helped me in the sense that now when I'm thinking about what can I do beyond my day-to-day job, another set of activities are now in the space of things within my reach, right? Whereas if public speaking is not a thing that you were doing, it doesn't really help you, it constrains the number of options that you have when you think about what else can I do beyond my day-to-day role? Now, the public speaking itself, it has helped me distill information down to its core elements, because you need to learn succinctness in a way. You can't just ramble like you would with your friends in a cafe. You have to think about, how do I make the most impact in the least amount of words possible? And you'll see that, there's this old saying that says, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter.
Yeah.
It's the same idea when you have a presentation where every word matters. And it's also helped me earn trust, let's say, with other people. The power of speech is something that has been passed down through human history, right? Storytelling has always been the way that we've conveyed information before we even invented writing. So it hits our core still in a way that cold, calculated information doesn't. And so going back to what you were saying about people's skills, especially in the customer-facing role, it can earn trust with people long before you even meet them.
Yeah.
And you see that now with a lot of people who are publishing content online, especially people who are working in consultancy firms or offering some kind of information product or bespoke service, professional service. They're able to establish trust with a lot of people who need their help by delivering a lot of value from their published content, which helps a lot of people by itself. And then people who need it a step further, they need deeper help, you can find those people faster and then get hands-on with them too. So it serves as kind of like a value funnel for the things that you know, because a lot of people don't know that you know these things, and they need your help, Absolutely. So I think these are the things that have been helpful for me for public speaking.
I think writing and speaking are the two very important skills that anyone trying to make a switch to a career, it's any career, it's not like just tech. But I think it's really important in data, AI space. Not only because you build a brand around it, but also because it helps with your own learning. So we do a lot of writing in Amazon, but recently, as I started learning about generative AI and agentic AI, what added most value to me is I do daily posts on LinkedIn, for example. And posts on LinkedIn means that you have to take a wide information and then think about how you can simplify, make it shorter, and still add some value to the reader, right? And that process itself of gathering a lot of information and then synthesizing it into a LinkedIn post is really valuable in terms of learning. And you do on a daily basis, the learning keeps compounding because you have already learned something and then you are just adding layers on top of it, right? And it compounds your understanding of a particular technology, a particular tech. So this is another really great trick, if you like, if you wanted to learn something new, right? Start writing about it. It doesn't need to be like, you don't need to have to do like public writing, LinkedIn post, something like that. Try to, you must have heard about this thing. If you want to learn a topic really well, try to teach it to someone. Right?
100%. And this is a form of teaching like you've been doing on LinkedIn and on Substack. You're teaching other people, so you're learning it better.
Yes. It takes a lot of research. AI helps a lot nowadays.
Definitely,
in terms of cutting the time down, but you have to be really cautious about it because you don't want to give false information. But it helps with time management because my output has multiplied now. Right? Because I go beyond the writer's block, get some ideas, and then start studying about them, and then synthesize things. Right? Make it simpler. So that's a great way of learning new things, and I think anyone should explore writing as a tool for doing that.
I think you mentioned something that was interesting there. If I could build on it a little bit, you said that so when you do this exercise every day, you're building on the knowledge that you've synthesized the day before, and building on that, and building on that, and building on that. I think a lot of people underestimate the amount of accumulation needed to build expertise in something, and so they get intimidated when they see an expert and it stops them from entering into a field. And that happens a lot in something that most of us can relate to in the fitness world, Like you're on Instagram, you see some of these fitfluencers, as they call them, And these are top 1% physiques, for example. And you're like, you know what, I can't, there's no way I can reach this, so I'm just going to keep eating potato chips and junk food, etc. And that's it, you know. But it's not really fair for you to compare somebody's day 3,500 to your day 1, you know. And there's nothing magical that that person is doing. Of course, they know some stuff that you don't know, for sure. But the real differentiator here is the accumulation of learning and experience that they've gone through that you haven't. And so I encourage anybody who's trying to think about a skill, especially in their career, think about when you're trying to figure out what you should do or how to get good at something, think about adding the element of time to the mix, right? What, if you did for an extended amount of time, would really give you the results that the other people didn't get, not because you were smarter than them, but just because you stuck with it and they didn't? What are the things that people are giving up in that maybe sometimes they don't like to do? If you just kept doing it, you would come out ahead. And it applies to so many things in life. Things that you can't really, there's no compression algorithm for it. I mean, for example, raising a child, right? Like you can't do that in a short amount of time. You have to raise them across time. So it's the same with your career. It's the same with learning new skills. It's the same with learning meta skills. And couple that with the volume plus the mentors, you can learn almost anything you need to learn, really.
In terms of learning and adopting what you said, like, you know, the fact that a lot of people get frightened and don't jump into a new area of learning. One of the tricks that I have learned is the theory of 1% improvement, right? So
incremental gains.
Incremental gains. So all you need to do is make sure that tomorrow you're 1% better than today, right? Or you're 1% better today than yesterday. And not every day will be perfect. But it's about focusing on your own learning rather than comparing yourself to others, because anyone who's expert in the field that you're trying to learn, they have done the same thing, right? They have this experience at the back. No one becomes an expert in a single day, right? So you have to put in the effort, and just to keep track of things, just keep track of 1% improvement so that it's not overwhelming. And if you keep doing 1% improvement stuff, you will see it keeps compounding. It's not that it's 1% daily, right? It compounds. The other thing is, with this kind of mindset, you start tracking things, right? So tracking is, I'm not as good in tracking as you. I know that, you know, you do a lot of tracking with your diet and your exercise. And I think the best way to stick to habits is to track outcomes. You find a way of measuring them, you find a way of tracking them regularly, then all of the other noise around you, you comparing yourself to others, they die down because you're focused on your own thing.
Progress, not perfection.
Basically. And it's a process, right? So the one thing that I learned is that I want to be fit rather than being a bodybuilder, right? And it's in any field, right? So I want to learn one new topic about AI every day, rather than being a master of AI, right? So something like that. So it's just having that mental model helps with learning new things.
I often find that people get caught up in binary thinking, right? Where they think I will become an AI master or nothing at all, you know. And most of us don't need this or this, right? We just need some. We don't need all. I want to ask you about another particular meta skill that maybe doesn't get talked about enough, and I think it's a real big barrier to entry for a lot of people that makes them hesitate to go on the journey of the 1% improvement every day, which is, how do you know where to focus your effort or what to work on? And my question to you about that is, in your job, how do you decide? And then on the macro scale, how did you decide at different forks in the road in terms of decisions in your career? Like, how do you decide, I'm going to move from this role to this role, or from this job to this job, or this company to this company, or I want to move from this space into that space? Because a lot of people, with the uncertainty of the future or the uncertainty of the effort in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I don't know if this is going to pay off, so I'm not able to get the motivation to do the work. But if I believed in the outcome, if I trusted my judgment that, you know what, this is going to be good for me, that's when they can put in the effort. That's been my personal observation. So what are your thoughts on that?
Basically, when it comes to day-to-day work, right? I kind of divide my time into 80%. Like you mentioned, like you have the same mental model, and I think we have learned in AWS, the culture supports that as
Sure,
well,
yeah.
right? So 80% customer work, and I leave 20% for anything else, and
Yeah.
anything else is like anything that interests me. So something that I want to learn, initiatives that I am working on, like I work with communities in AWS, so my community work demands 10% of my time. Other 10% I spend on learning. So, and I try to be very brutal with my calendar to maintain that, right? You cannot do it otherwise, especially in high performing organizations. There will be always more demand for your time. Uh, all you need to do is be brutal with your calendar. And I think there's one thing about being brutal on calendar, like on the calendar, but actually aligning to that with your life. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so right. I mean, you can say that okay, I'll block out times for doing this, but you have to actually do them at that time. Otherwise, you will not find the time, right? So that's how it works. So you have to align your life with the calendar and be brutal about it. And when you do that, you start measuring. You can actually measure that, okay, yeah, last week I actually spent 20% on learning and stuff that I want to do, right? And I actually spent 80%. Yeah, some weeks it will be 60-40, some weeks it will be 80. But being brutal means that you still maintain that rhythm every week, right? So that's one thing. And then you prioritize within these buckets. So if I have got customer engagements, I will see which engagements are urgent, where it, there's some sort of priority mechanism that I will implement, and it differs depending on the situation. So that's how I manage to do things that I want to do. If you want to actually learn something new, I also feel that just trying to fit everything in your work hours or these 40 hours of the week will not work. If you want to do something extraordinary with some, learning things, you have to carve out some time in the weekend. Yes, there is work-life balance. You have to think about it. You have family, but you have to find out some time to focus on what you want to learn. Like for example, I carve out at least 2 hours on Saturday morning. I wake up early before my daughter wakes up, and I'll carve out 2 hours to do something that interests me and keeps me going. So that's something that I do. And then the overall, like in my career, like how I decide where to focus on, it's purely based on interest, right? Yes, there has to be some alignment with my experience, because as of now, I never thought about moving to something totally different than what I do, right? So I was a database administrator, and then when I saw that, okay, oh, I'm learning to write SQL, I'm getting expertise in that, okay, I'll start building something. Then I went to do BI development, and then I said, oh, cloud is interesting. This is where the future is going to be. I'll learn how it works. Then I started learning it. Now I strongly believe that AI is going to make a big impact. It's already making, but there's a lot of noise, obviously. But what I try to do, and I'm lucky to be in this kind of environment, that I can decouple the hype from what really matters and what's really working, right? And then I try to learn that stuff. That's how I do it.
Okay.
You tell me how you do it.
Well, this is something I think that's an ongoing struggle for everybody, and it's still messy the way that it is. But the mental model that I follow is something like this. Number one, what's the most impactful thing I could be doing with this time slot? And I don't just try to have a to-do list. I try to map the things that I need to do onto my calendar for the week, and I have them marked by what absolutely needs to get done on those days. And then everything else follows. And then the way to decide that is what has the highest impact on my organization and on my customers. The second, or closely related metric, is how does it impact my metrics? And like you said, metrics doesn't just mean your work, it also means your life metrics. Like, how will me taking this activity affect things outside of work as well? Because I have metrics outside of work too that also need to be achieved. And then the third part is, how is it going to impact other people around me? Even if it doesn't fall into these metrics, Does my mentee need my help? Is there somebody that's struggling? Is there somebody that had an emergency and they need me to cover for them? Same question for outside of work. And for this, you should accept some of the disruption that would happen to your calendar, because it's not all about robotic optimization of everything. But I think, generally speaking, using those two those two or three mental models, you cover most of the cases. Now, looking at career itself, one of the ways that I found to make good decisions across different things, especially when you're trying to think about what should I do with my life, and look at different careers that are totally different from each other. There is this framework, there's a whole book about it called Little Bets that I found very useful, which is you basically design an experiment, a low-risk way for you to test the thing that you're romanticizing about, and try to do it and get good feedback on it quickly to decide if you want to move forward. So for example, when I was in university, I was studying computer engineering, but I had a bit of a crisis. Like, I didn't know if I even wanted to work in this. So I did theater club, I did an internship in oil and gas, I did an internship in supply chain, I did front-end development, back-end development. Even when I started working, I took time from my vacation days to try and try out investment banking. All of these moves that I made, they actually reinforced my confidence that tech is the best career for me. And I didn't have one foot out the door because I was romanticizing these other industries anymore, because I could make a more educated decision because I've seen the pros and cons from the inside, even if it's on a limited basis. And if it had gone the other way, maybe I would have fallen in love with one of these careers, I could have left tech and I would have been confident in that decision as well. And I found that that's been a very good way to make your next move, which is try it out first, you know? Don't just bet the farm on everything, you know? Like, there is a way that you can engineer an experiment to do a secondment or an assignment or an internship or a shadowing or a reverse shadowing or something where you can try out this other thing and figure out how it affects all of your life metrics. And then from there, you can make an educated decision. Because when you're younger, you tend to think simply about interest or about passion, about the subject matter. But when you're older, you have a lot more metrics to consider. Compensation, career growth, how it impacts your life, your location, your partner's life, what other avenues it opens. So that's been one very good framework for career. Another one, which has helped a lot, is if you don't know what decision to make the design for optionality. Make the decision that will give you the most options possible. So I'm going to be a bit biased and a bit controversial with this opinion here, but for example, if you were to choose a degree in university and you have the choice between a degree that would give you 10 work options, but it's harder, or a degree that will give you 5 options, but it's easier, I would say go for the harder one. And the reason that I would say that is that you don't know 4 years from now what you're going to want. You don't know what the job market's going to be like. And you haven't experienced work in any of these 10 things. So you need to pick the option that will give you the most options. Going back to data and analytics and working in tech, that's why, for example, I would recommend for earlier in your career to do more technical roles, because it's very difficult to do a business role when you're younger and then try to go back and do something technical when you're older. However, if you're younger and you do something technical, you can always move into the business direction when you want, or you can take one of the technical options forward. So always having the most options for what you need in your life will give you more levers to optimize your next move and tailor it more and more to the metrics that you have in your life and in your work.
Makes sense. Yeah. Makes sense. You mentioned about if you're starting your career, or I think that's a good segue into what I was thinking about discussing or asking you. Is if someone who's watching this, they're just coming out of university, thinking about making a career in data and AI, what would be your advice today as the market is, where they can start? I mean, it will be a lot different, I suppose, from how we started. But you know, given today's market, what would be your advice in what they should be learning? how they can start in terms of getting into this?
Sure. So there's some generic advice I would offer, and then something a bit more specific. So the generic is one of the first things that you said, which is be curious. You got to be the kind of person who's switched on and knows what's going on in the world. So we've got great tools now. You know, there are people who are giving you information out there for free. Be the kind of person who listens to podcasts and YouTube videos about the exact questions that you're wondering about all the time, and keep ChatGPT in your pocket or any other Gen AI tool that you like, and ask it questions all the time about the things that you're wondering about. Don't keep open loops, like you were saying. Close the loops for yourself. You know, if you're wondering if this career is better for you or that one, ask it. Ask people out there. I promise you most of the answers are out there. And so you'll have a much wider worldview than your peers, and it'll build into your intuition and into your instinct about what skills do I need at this junction in my life, in the country that I'm in the place that I want to be, in the careers that I want to do. So that's number one. Number two, I would encourage people to think about, how do I build my market of one story, you know? So say that you don't really like, I don't know, construction engineering. You're studying economics at university. You love economics, but you're concerned about finding the right job, and let's say you're in a geography that doesn't have a lot of jobs that require an economics degree. How can you combine economics with other skills to make yourself unique? So you could combine economics with some data analytics, with some statistics, and you can become an econometrician. Or if you're a journalist and you learn some data analysis skills, you could become a data journalist. This is a real role that exists now. If you're a marketer, but you're worried that agencies are going to outsource, you know, the available jobs that you're trying to look for, if you become a marketer who's very tech savvy and build those skills for yourself, you could become a product manager, for example. Or you could if you like design, let's say you like fashion design, right? You could learn a bit of front-end development and become a graphic designer, and you can design beautiful-looking front ends for mobile apps and websites. Obviously, I'm giving tech-specific examples because that's the world that I live in. But in any field, you can combine the thing that you're interested in with the strengths that you have, with the skills that you're missing, into something that not a lot of people can do.
And
What do you
it's
think about that?
interesting because what I think is it kind of matches to this. Is the mental model I have is you should always focus on building a T-shaped skill
The
foundation.
consultancy approach.
Yeah. So you start with something that you want to go deep into, and again, that might change as you start exploring things. But you know, focus on one thing because you're starting now. So you have to need some expertise, some maturity level, then to explore other areas. So start with that. If you find it interesting, keep getting deeper in that, but then start exploring the adjacent things, right? Like you said that if you're interested in data and analytics, and then you start thinking about, okay, how do I storytell with that data? Can I actually pick up a case or a study and actually research some data around it and present that story in a different way, right? And then start doing this on the side. I think pollinating cross domains to your core domain opens up a lot of opportunities.
For sure.
And it helps with your growth as well. So if you're just starting today, start with something, focus on something, gain some maturity, and then see if you're interested, keep doing it. If you're not, then explore other areas and see which fits better. I mean, you might explore different domains and find another domain that you want to get deep into, but then you have already learned something else in one domain that you can then marry them together to do something else.
I think that's a really good mental model where you balance expertise with also exploration, like exploring and exploiting at the same time. So you're delivering value in what you have, but you're also looking at what's around the corner so that you can build towards that. So just to leave our listeners with some actionable advice, what would be the top 3 recommendations that you would give to somebody aspiring to have a successful tech career?
Okay. I think, so the word successful is relative. I think I consider success in the career if you're growing and you're curious, like your curiosity never dies. Like you are always interested in this domain. Like you wake up in the morning and think about, okay, what can we do with this? Yeah, you might not like your daily job every day, but there's something else that keeps you going in this domain. Now, if you are starting out, as I described, focus on creating a T-shaped skill framework. Go deep on one thing, but then have your eyes and learn other things in adjacent areas so that you can create a formative experience around it or knowledge around it. The other thing is focus on not only the tech or the core skills for your job, focus on the meta skills. I think the mental model I follow in terms of building meta skills is do something that the 99% of others in your field are not doing. For example, only 1% post on LinkedIn every day.
Yeah.
So do that, right? That builds a brand around you. Public speaking, a lot of people do that. Do that. Writing blogs. It can be anything that most of the people in your field don't do, and if you do it, it's easier to grow in that field. So yeah, I think these are the three main things. Like T-shaped skills, your meta skills, emotional quotient, and try to do something that most of the people are not doing in your field.
Awesome. Awesome.
Tell me what do you think? Let's leave our viewers with some of mental models from your side.
Well, I would say the first tip that I would give them would be spend a significant amount of time and effort figuring out what you want. This is the first thing, because all of your action and your activity and your fire will come down to, why am I doing this, right? And yes, this is a moving target, but let's say in blocks of 5 years, you can get to a semi-stable answer, taking into account all of your life goals. So spend time figuring out what you want. This is an important part. And the answer is not in here. If you sit around and reflect, it'll only get you so far. You need to spend time and effort exploring and figuring out and trying things that other people won't. Don't assume that you know what you want, and don't assume that the theory of what you're learning equals the execution of it day to day. So that's the first thing. Once you do that, it'll help you converge on the thing that you want to do, and that will give you the motivation to move forward. Once you have that, then you can use that fire to do number 2, which is get really good at the thing that you need to do. To your point, one thing. And that one thing doesn't, it could be a job, and that job requires 3 different skills or 4 different skills, fine. But whatever the thing you're trying to do requires, whether it's 1 skill or 4 or 5, make sure that you become at least in the top 25% of that thing in as short amount of time as possible. At that point in your career, I would say deprioritize work-life balance. Think of life in seasons. This is the winter of your career, where you need to batten down the hatches and you need to work really hard so that you can get the rewards later. So be okay with working the extra hours and making a couple of sacrifices. You won't get extraordinary results any other way, unfortunately. That's just how life works. So focus on mastery in the second part. And then the third thing I would say is then accumulate your meta skills to become really strategic about what you want to do in the later years. Because as you get more experienced, you could spend so many hours on an absolute staggering amount of things, but you only have a finite amount of time, and you have less time and less energy and higher opportunity cost and and more responsibilities than before. So now is the time for you to think about, what is the 80-20 look like for each part of my life and each part of my career? How do I make the best move in the shortest amount of time for the shortest amount of effort with the highest amount of impact? Actually, that if I could add a fourth thing, which is a through line through all of this, which is develop a nose for impact. Your success in your career is directly proportional to how much value you add to other people. And the more you think about others and how you impact them, the more you're going to get more of what you want. If you think about everything as a zero-sum game, yeah. I took something, so you lost something. That may work in the short term for a while, but long term, it's not a great way to design a career or a life. So if you think about impact in your personal life and in your professional life, you can't go wrong. That's the North Star that can always bring you home.
Yeah.
So those are the 4 things that I would say.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. That's. I think we have a good mental model around how to excel in tech career, like
Yeah.
not just data and analytics. I think it's more general in tech career.
Definitely.
Is there anything specific that you want to add for just data analytics and AI?
For data analytics specifically, I would say you need to keep your eye on the future trends for sure. Now it's Gen AI, for example. But you also need to remember that people are still people working in organizations, and you need to combine what's new and shiny with first principles, like you said, which is how do you institute change around people in your organization and in other organizations? What will make people move forward and what will block something?
Yeah.
How do you navigate complex challenges, and how do you align people's interests with what would be best for them, what would create success for their outcomes, and how can you be the bridge for those things? So no matter what part of the data and analytics career you choose, I would caution against thinking, build it and they will come. No, you need to understand where do they need to go, and then you build that bridge for them, even if they don't ask for it.
All right.
Yeah. What would you say as the lasting advice for data analytics specifically?
I think I would repeat the understanding of fundamentals. Like you need to understand the fundamentals of data analytics. There are really good books around it. And when the podcasts come out, we will reference some of these books and resources that we will recommend.
Okay.
But I think you need to don't focus on products.
Yeah.
Focus on the fundamentals, and watch out for trends. I think there's nothing but better to say. People, knowledge, and trends. I think that's what we need to do. People it's really important. It's not only just learning about data and learning the latest trends in this market. You have to understand how people will get value from it.
Definitely. Yeah. Sandy, I've learned a lot from you for these last couple of years. I'm glad that we got a chance to chat so you can share the summary of your experience with other people, and hopefully they'll be able to get a lot of value from that and learn from it. And hopefully they can reach out if they need any more career advice.
No, I'm absolutely happy and feel really fortunate that I work with you, Ismail. We learn from each other a lot, so thank you very much.
Awesome. Appreciate you, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.